I never imagined it would go this far. The call from the police was the first sign, but when I opened the door and saw Rachel standing there, tears streaming down her face, it was like the ground beneath me had cracked open. She was the last person I expected to be pointing fingers at me like I was some kind of criminal. "You need to come with me, Emma," the officer said, voice stern but not unkind. I was still trying to process what was happening. Rachel had called them. My own sister had called the police on me, accusing me of something I couldn't even wrap my head around. The kids, Max, Mia, and Luke, had been living with me for months. I had tried to help Rachel, tried to give her space to get back on her feet, and now this. "You're not going to take her away, are you?" I asked, my voice wavering as I stepped aside. I couldn't believe it. How had we come to this? Rachel didn't even look at me. She just stood there, arms folded tightly across her chest, as though my very existence was an affront to her. The officer hesitated for a moment, as if weighing his options. "We just need to get the facts, ma'am. We can sort this out. But your sister feels threatened here." Rachel finally spoke, her voice low but cutting, like a knife through the air. "I'm just trying to protect my kids, Emma. They don't feel safe here. They don't feel safe with you anymore." The words hung in the air between us, suffocating me. "You've been controlling. The way you treat me, the way you treat them, it's not right." I felt a hot wave of panic and anger rush over me. "What the hell are you talking about? I've done everything for you. You begged me to help. I've been keeping a roof over your head, watching your kids, cleaning up after you like I'm your maid. And now this? You really think I've been hurting you?" Rachel's eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite place, but it wasn't guilt. It wasn't remorse. "I didn't ask you to take over my life, Emma. I didn't ask you to fix everything for me. You think you're helping, but all you're doing is making it worse. I never asked to live here. And neither did the kids." I took a step back, the words hitting me harder than I expected. Rachel had always been needy, always one to rely on others, but I thought we were a team. I thought we were family. But now, hearing her accuse me like this, like I was the one trapping her, it felt like a betrayal. My mind couldn't catch up to my emotions, and I stood there, speechless. The officer, sensing the tension, looked from me to Rachel, then back again. "Ma'am, I need to ask you to step outside while we sort this out." He motioned toward the door, and I felt a rush of indignation. I wasn't the one who needed to leave, but that's exactly what he was implying. I shook my head, but Rachel was already nodding, stepping back into the hallway, her eyes not meeting mine. "I don't want to be here anymore. I want my kids to be safe," she muttered. "You don't understand. You're not my mother." I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, oppressive. Every word she said was a dagger, twisting deeper into me. I had spent years bending over backward for Rachel, putting my own life on hold to help her, to make sure her kids were fed, had clothes, had a safe place to sleep. And this was how she repaid me? By calling the police on me? Accusing me of hurting her children? "Emma, just go," Alyssa's voice broke through my daze. She'd been standing in the doorway of the living room the entire time, watching this play out in silence. But I could see the tension in her face. She didn't want to get involved, didn't want to choose sides, but the damage had already been done. I turned to Alyssa, trying to read her expression, but it was unreadable. "What the hell is happening, Alyssa?" My voice cracked, the words heavy with confusion and hurt. "Why is she doing this? After everything I've done for her, why would she?" "I don't know," Alyssa said quietly. "But this is beyond us, Em. She's got the officer on her side. If you stay, it's only going to make things worse. Just go." And in that moment, I realized the truth I had been refusing to see. Rachel had no intention of leaving. She wasn't just staying here temporarily, like I thought. She wasn't trying to get back on her feet. No, she was using me, using my life, using my house to avoid responsibility, and the kids, they were just part of the deal. They were the excuse. And I had let it happen. I stepped out onto the porch, still dazed, still unsure what had just occurred. How had things gotten so out of hand so fast? Rachel, my own flesh and blood, had just turned everything upside down. The kids she had begged me to help. How could she accuse me of hurting them? How could she accuse me of anything other than loving them like my own? As the officer stepped into the house to talk to Rachel, I was left standing there, trying to catch my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what was coming next, but I could already feel it. Something had snapped, and nothing would ever be the same again. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty and simmering tension. Alyssa barely spoke to me. She kept her distance, retreating to her room whenever I tried to talk. I knew she was frustrated, but I also knew she wasn't the one caught in the middle of all this. It was hard to shake the feeling that she was silently blaming me, and I couldn't tell if it was because she was angry about the disruption to her life or if she felt like I had dragged her into something she wanted no part of. The kids were as difficult as ever. Max, at 12, was already an expert in deflecting responsibility. Mia, only 9, had taken to shutting herself in her room, playing games on her tablet with earphones in, as though the world around her didn't matter. Luke, the baby at 5, had stopped speaking to anyone unless it was to ask for something, and, even then, his voice was quiet, as though he was trying to avoid drawing attention. I had no idea what they were feeling, but I knew they were affected by everything that had happened. The constant arguments, the tension in the house, it was all too much for them, but that was never the problem, was it? The problem was Rachel. I still couldn't understand what had happened. One moment, we were trying to make it work, and the next, Rachel had turned on me. Every time I tried to approach her, she would give me that look, the one that said she had already made up her mind, and nothing I said could change it. I kept hoping she would come to her senses, but after the police incident, things only escalated. I was getting phone calls from Rachel's friends, people I didn't know very well, but who had somehow become involved in the situation. They called to tell me how out of control I was, how manipulative I had become. Some even asked if I had other plans for the house, as though I had some sinister agenda. I was flooded with messages and calls, each one a reminder of how things had spiraled out of control. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt a pit in my stomach. But it wasn't just the phone calls. It was the way the neighbors started looking at me. People who used to wave and smile now turned their heads when I walked past, their glances filled with judgment. It felt like the whole world was against me, like I was the one who had done something wrong, even though all I had ever done was try to help. I had given Rachel everything, and now all I had was this sense of betrayal and confusion. The anger I felt towards her was bubbling to the surface, and no matter how hard I tried to suppress it, it kept spilling over. It was late one evening when Rachel showed up at the door again. I didn't know if I was relieved or terrified, but when I opened it, there she was, standing in the rain, her face red and blotchy from crying. Her eyes were wild, desperate, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the sister I had once known, the one who wasn't afraid to lean on me for support. But that person was buried somewhere deep under the anger and the accusations she'd been throwing at me. She didn't even wait for me to say anything before she spoke. "Emma," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean to go this far. But you have to understand, I can't live like this anymore. I can't keep pretending everything's fine." She wiped her eyes, but the tears kept coming. "I thought I could make it work, but you're suffocating me. You're controlling everything. I can't breathe." I didn't know what to say. I had no idea what was going on in her head, but it was clear that I wasn't going to get through to her. Not now. She wasn't the same person I had spent years helping. The sister I had known was gone, replaced by someone filled with so much anger and resentment. "Rachel, you're talking about me like I've done something terrible," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "You came to me for help. I let you move in here with your kids. I've bent over backward to make sure you and the kids had everything you needed. And this is how you repay me." Rachel's face twisted in frustration, and she took a step back, her hands clenching into fists. "You don't get it, do you? I don't want your help anymore, Emma. I never asked for it. You're the one who decided this was the way it had to be. You think you're doing me a favor, but all you're doing is making me feel like I owe you something. I don't owe you anything. Not anymore." I felt my heart drop. I couldn't understand what was happening. It was like I had been living in some alternate reality where everything had flipped upside down. Rachel was the one who had needed me. Rachel was the one who had asked for help, not the other way around. But now, she was telling me that she had never wanted any of it. That she had never needed me. "Please, Rachel," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of frustration and hurt. "Don't do this. Don't turn on me like this. You're my sister. You're family. You don't just walk away from that." But Rachel wasn't listening anymore. She stepped away from the door, her expression cold. "I don't need you, Emma. I never did. And if you want me gone, I'll leave. I'll take the kids and go, and you'll never hear from me again." My stomach dropped. I had never felt so powerless in my entire life. I had spent years taking care of her, sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of her and her kids, and now she was standing there, telling me she didn't need me. That I had been nothing but a burden. I had been nothing but a tool for her to use, and now that she was done with me, she was throwing me away. "I can't believe you," I whispered, more to myself than to her. Rachel didn't respond. She just turned and walked down the steps, her back to me as she disappeared into the night. The door slammed shut behind her, and I stood there in the silence, feeling a weight I couldn't explain pressing on my chest. I had no idea what to do. I didn't know if I could keep fighting for something that felt so broken. But one thing was clear, I wasn't the one who had walked away from this. Rachel had. And now I was left with nothing but the shards of a relationship I wasn't sure I could ever fix. The next few days felt like I was living in a fog, trying to make sense of the mess that had become my life. Rachel was gone, at least for now, and I had no idea where she'd taken the kids. I hadn't heard from her since that night, and the silence felt suffocating. Alyssa was still distant, her presence in the house like a shadow, and I couldn't blame her. I wasn't sure what I had expected, but I'd hoped that maybe after Rachel left, things would settle down. They didn't. They only got worse. It was a Thursday afternoon when I got a call that changed everything. I had been sitting in the kitchen, going through emails for work, when my phone buzzed. It was from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Emma?" The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but there was something about it that made me sit up straighter. "This is Karen. I'm a social worker. I'm trying to get in touch with Rachel. Do you know where she is?" The name Karen didn't ring any bells, and I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I haven't heard from her in a few days," I said carefully, my mind racing. "Why? Is something wrong?" "Rachel filed a report a few days ago about possible child neglect," Karen said, her voice steady but concerned. "She named you as the primary person involved. We've been trying to locate her, and we believe she might be in danger, or at least that her children might be. Can you tell me where she is?" I stood up, my hands shaking. I had no idea what to say. "No, I don't know where she is. Rachel left a while ago. I don't know what she's told you, but this is all a misunderstanding." Karen paused for a moment, and I could hear her scribbling something down. "I understand that you're upset, Emma. I'm just trying to gather the facts. Rachel's been very distressed, and we need to ensure that the children are safe. Can you think of anyone who might know where she's gone?" I was silent for a moment, trying to process everything she had said. I thought about calling Alyssa for help, but I knew that wouldn't go well. Alyssa had been barely speaking to me since the police incident, and I had no idea where Rachel could have gone. She had left in such a hurry that I hadn't even thought to ask her about her plans. "I don't know," I finally said, my voice sounding hollow. "I don't know where she is, but if I find out anything, I'll let you know." After I hung up, the reality of what Rachel had done hit me again, harder this time. She had filed a report. She had gone to the authorities, making accusations that I was neglecting her children, and now a social worker was involved. My heart raced as I realized just how far this had gone. The worst part? I didn't even know what Rachel had told them. She had accused me of something I didn't even understand, and now I was being dragged into an investigation. I spent the rest of the day trying to find out if anyone knew where Rachel had gone, but no one had any answers. Her friends wouldn't pick up the phone, and when I tried to reach out to a few of her old acquaintances, they told me they hadn't seen her in days. I was at a loss. I had no idea what to do next. Rachel's sudden departure had thrown me off balance, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I knew about what had been going on in her life. I had been so focused on trying to help her that I hadn't stopped to think about why she had asked for help in the first place. That night, when Alyssa came home, I tried to talk to her, but she wasn't having it. "I can't do this anymore, Emma," she said, her voice sharp and tired. "I don't know what's going on with Rachel, but this is too much. I can't be in the middle of it. I don't even know who's telling the truth here." I understood where she was coming from, but it didn't make the sting of her words any easier to take. "Alyssa, I need you," I said, feeling a tightness in my chest. "I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and I can't do it alone. You're my friend. You've always been there for me. Please, just help me get to the bottom of this." She looked at me, her face hard with exhaustion, and for a moment, I thought she might say something. But instead, she just shook her head and walked into her room, closing the door softly behind her. I spent the next few hours pacing the house, trying to wrap my mind around everything that had happened. The police, the accusations, the social worker, I felt like I was suffocating. I couldn't let Rachel get away with this. I couldn't let her ruin everything we had built, but I didn't know how to fight back. How could I defend myself when I didn't even understand the accusations? That's when something strange happened. The doorbell rang, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. I wasn't expecting anyone, and the sudden interruption made my nerves flare up. I opened the door, and standing there was a woman I didn't recognize. "Hi, I'm Kate," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Rachel's friend." I'm sorry to show up like this, but I think we need to talk." I stepped back, confused. Rachel's friend? I didn't even know she had anyone who. "I know this must be confusing," Kate interrupted gently, "but I think you need to hear what I have to say." She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, and I didn't know whether to be grateful or suspicious. But as she sat down at the kitchen table, I could see something in her eyes, something that made me believe she might know what Rachel wasn't telling me. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Kate hesitated for a moment, then leaned forward. "Rachel's been in a bad place, Emma. Worse than you know. She didn't just leave because she was mad at you. There's more to it. She's been seeing someone who's been influencing her, manipulating her. I don't know all the details, but I do know she's not in her right mind. She's doing things she wouldn't normally do, things that are dangerous for her and the kids." I stared at her, disbelief mixing with a rush of confusion. "What are you talking about? Why didn't she say anything? Why didn't she ask for help?" Kate sighed, shaking her head. "She's scared, Emma. She doesn't know who to trust anymore. But I do know this, if you want to help her, you have to find her before it's too late." My heart skipped a beat. What was Kate trying to tell me? And who was this person Rachel had gotten involved with? I had no idea what I was walking into, but it was clear I had no choice but to follow the thread Kate had given me. The days following Kate's visit were a whirlwind. I couldn't stop thinking about what she had said, how Rachel's behavior wasn't entirely her own. The idea that someone was manipulating her, that there was more to the story than what I'd seen, gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel was in deeper than I realized, and the worst part was, I still didn't know who this person was. Who had gotten into her head and convinced her that I was the enemy? I had to find out. I tried calling Kate a few times, hoping for more details, but each time, she didn't answer. It was as though she had given me just enough to spark my curiosity, but not enough to understand the full picture. I couldn't sit around waiting for her to come back to me, though. If Rachel was in danger, I needed to find her myself. But where would I even start? That's when I got a call that I didn't expect. It was from the same social worker, Karen. Her voice was much more measured this time, like she had already made up her mind about something. "Emma, I need you to come down to the station." "There's been a development," she said, and the way she said it made my heart skip a beat. "We've located Rachel." I didn't even wait for her to explain before I hung up and grabbed my coat. I barely remembered to lock the door behind me. The drive to the station felt like it took an eternity, my mind racing with 1,000 questions, but one stood out above all the others. Was Rachel okay? When I arrived, Karen was waiting for me in the lobby, looking calm but somehow tense. She led me into a small interview room, and I could see the papers in her hand, the look of someone who had seen too much but still had to keep going. "Rachel's safe for now," Karen said, sitting across from me. "But we have a lot to talk about." I exhaled, feeling a weight I hadn't even known was there lift off my shoulders. "What happened? Where is she?" "She's here, in the building," Karen replied. "But before you see her, I need you to understand something. Rachel's been through a lot. We think she was manipulated, possibly coerced, by someone who's been influencing her decisions for months. She's not in the right state of mind. She's been very vulnerable." My mind was racing, trying to piece things together. "Who is this person? Do you know who they are?" Karen nodded slowly. "His name is Greg. He's someone from Rachel's past. We've been looking into him, but the truth is, we don't have much information yet. All we know is that he's been pressuring her to make decisions that have been harmful to both her and her children." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Greg. The name meant nothing to me. I had never heard of him, but it was clear that he was central to everything that had gone wrong. Rachel had always been so independent, so strong-willed, but somewhere along the line, she had let someone like him, get too close. "Where is she now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Is she okay?" "She's in a holding area for now," Karen said, her expression softening. "She's been through a lot, Emma. But she's here, and that's what matters. She's safe." I nodded, feeling the knot in my stomach loosen just a little. "Can I see her?" Karen hesitated, her eyes flicking to the door as if weighing something in her mind. Finally, she spoke. "I think it's important for you to understand that Rachel is going through a process right now. She's been under a lot of pressure. I don't know how she'll react when she sees you. But if you want to try, we can arrange it. I didn't even have to think about it. I want to see her. I need to talk to her. I have to fix this. I need her to understand." Karen led me down a narrow hallway to a small room where Rachel was sitting, her hands folded in her lap. She looked smaller than I remembered, like a part of her had been lost. Her eyes were red, and she was staring at the floor, as if she didn't know where to look or what to do. When she looked up and saw me standing in the doorway, her face softened, but there was no warmth in her expression. It was like looking at a stranger, someone I barely recognized, someone I didn't know how to reach anymore. I had always known Rachel as someone who could be tough when she needed to be, but now, she looked fragile, broken. "Rachel," I said softly, my voice shaking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know what was happening. I never meant to hurt you." Her lips trembled, and she blinked as if trying to stop herself from crying. "You don't get it, Emma," she whispered, her voice raw. "I was drowning, and you were just standing there, watching me. I needed someone to save me, and all I got was you trying to fix everything. You don't know what it was like." I felt my chest tighten. "I didn't know what was happening, Rachel. I didn't know you were feeling like that. If I had known, I would have done something. I would have tried harder to understand." Rachel shook her head, her tears falling freely now. "You don't get it. You never did. I didn't need you to fix me, Emma. I just needed you to be there, to listen, to let me breathe. But you were so busy trying to make everything perfect, you didn't see me. You didn't see what I was becoming. I'm sorry for what I did, but I couldn't live like that anymore." I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. She was right. I had tried so hard to fix things, to put my own spin on what I thought was best, that I had missed the person who needed help the most, Rachel herself. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my heart breaking. "I never meant to make you feel that way. I was trying to help. I just didn't know how to do it." Rachel wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I know you were trying. But I don't think we can go back to what we were. Not after everything." The silence between us stretched on, both of us trapped in the realization that something had changed irreparably. I wanted to fix things. I wanted to bring her back to the person she was before everything fell apart, but I didn't know if that was even possible anymore. Karen's voice came from the doorway, breaking the moment. "It's time, Rachel. We need to get you settled. Rachel looked up at me one last time, her expression unreadable. I hope you find peace, Emma. I really do. But I think we both need to figure out who we are without each other. As she stood to leave, I felt the weight of her words sink deep into my bones. It wasn't just the end of a chapter, it was the end of everything I had believed about our relationship. We both had a lot of healing to do, but whether that healing would ever bring us back together was something I didn't know. All I could do was watch as Rachel walked away, unsure of what the future held, but knowing that things had irrevocably changed. The days after my conversation with Rachel felt like they were dragging on endlessly. I couldn't shake the weight of her words. She had changed so much, and I wasn't sure where I stood anymore. Our history, the connection we once had, was fractured now. I didn't even know what I was supposed to do. She was still under the influence of that man, Greg, and I couldn't stop thinking about how deep that manipulation ran. But I knew one thing for sure, I had to find a way to help her, even if she didn't want it. A few weeks passed, and Rachel's situation didn't seem to get better. Karen, the social worker, kept me updated, but it was clear that Rachel wasn't opening up. She was holding on to something, keeping a distance that was hard to bridge. And it hurt. The person I thought I knew had become someone I couldn't reach, someone so far gone that it made my heart ache with frustration and helplessness. I kept thinking of her kids, too, how they were adjusting without her. They were with foster parents now, and though I tried to visit them, there was a coldness to their smiles, a distance in their eyes. They didn't understand why things had changed, and neither did I. I still hadn't heard from Alyssa. She'd gone quiet ever since that night when I had tried to talk to her. The silence was louder than any argument we could have had. It was as if she had disappeared entirely, and I didn't know how to bring her back. Every time I thought about reaching out, I hesitated. I wasn't even sure what I would say. I was at home, sitting at the kitchen table, going over the details of Rachel's case with Karen again, when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to pick it up anyway. "Hello?" I said, my voice almost automatic. "Emma?" The voice was familiar, but not one I expected to hear. It was Alyssa. Alyssa? My heart leaped in my chest. "Where have you been?" "I've been trying to reach you." There was a pause on the other end, then a sigh. "I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go silent on you. I just needed some space. I've been thinking a lot about everything, about how things went down." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "I get it. But, Alyssa, I need you. This isn't just about me. It's about Rachel. About the kids. We can't let her keep spiraling like this. I don't know how to fix this, but I can't do it alone. Please." She was quiet for a long moment, and I could hear her breathing on the other end. "You're right," she finally said. "I've been angry. I've been so angry at you for getting caught in all of this, but I get it now. You weren't the one who broke things. It wasn't you who made all of this happen." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "Then, you'll help me? You'll be there for Rachel, for the kids?" "I will. But Emma, we can't just fix this overnight. Rachel needs time. You need time. We all do." Her words were like a balm to my bruised heart. She was right. There was no quick fix. No magic way to turn everything back to the way it was. But maybe, just maybe, we could start from where we were. That felt like a step in the right direction. "I know," I whispered. "I don't expect everything to go back to how it was. But I can't just give up on her." "I won't." The conversation ended with a promise to meet up soon, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Alyssa was coming back. We were coming back. A few days later, I met Alyssa at a small cafe, one we used to go to when things were simpler. I was nervous at first, unsure of how the conversation would go, but when she sat down across from me, there was an understanding between us that hadn't been there for a long time. "I'm sorry, Emma," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about everything I said. You didn't deserve any of it." I shook my head, holding up my hand. "Don't apologize. I get it. I was pushing you away too, and I didn't even realize it. We both made mistakes." She looked at me for a moment, then gave a small nod. "You know, it's funny. I've been so caught up in my own anger that I forgot something really important, that I love you, and I don't want to lose you over something like this. Tears stung my eyes, but I held them back. I love you too, Alyssa. I'm sorry for all the mess I created. But we can't let Rachel keep sinking deeper into this. She's not just hurting herself. She's hurting everyone around her. Alyssa took a deep breath and looked out the window, her fingers tapping lightly on her coffee cup. I think we need to focus on the kids first. If Rachel really is being manipulated, then we need to make sure they're okay. They've been through enough. I agreed. The kids needed stability, and right now, neither Rachel nor I could offer that. They deserved better. For the next few weeks, Alyssa and I worked together. We contacted Rachel's old friends and family, trying to track down more information about Greg. We visited the kids as often as we could, trying to show them that, despite everything, we were still there for them. But every step we took felt like it led to more questions than answers. Greg was elusive, his connections with Rachel unclear. Every time we thought we were getting closer to understanding what had happened, we were met with more dead ends. One evening, after a particularly frustrating day, I sat alone in the living room, thinking about everything that had happened. I couldn't help but feel like we were losing the battle. Maybe Rachel was too far gone, too tangled up in her own web of lies and manipulation. Maybe she couldn't be saved after all. Just as I was about to give up on the idea of ever seeing her the way she was again, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Karen. Rachel wants to see you. She's ready to talk. My heart pounded in my chest. Could this really be happening? Was she finally ready to face the truth? I didn't know, but one thing was clear, this was my chance, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. I grabbed my coat and headed out, unsure of what would happen next, but determined to make this moment count. No matter what happened, I was going to fight for Rachel. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the verge of something that could actually make a difference. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be quick. But it was a step toward healing. Maybe, just maybe, it was the first step toward putting everything back together.